Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. A lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Why not? Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And I do apologize for that momentary lapse with my audio, but here I am back again. Now, you'll notice that I've got a candle burning beside my shoulder here. And there's a very good reason for that. And the reason is that one of our Loving Life community, General Izak van Zyl, is not in a good way. His triple heart bypass was once again postponed for weeks due to theatres being on lockdown thanks to COVID-19. According to his surgeon, he is a ticking time bomb. They discharged him as they can't operate, and due to COVID-19, it is probably better for him to go home. He is very unwell. They're getting quotes and starting a fund-raising initiative in order to send him to a private hospital in order that he may be operated on soonest. I take it my mic is working now, guys. Please say yes, I can hear your sound. I can hear your sound. I'm pretty sure it's there. Anyway, let's continue. The family have no medical aid. At present, it seems like it may cost in the region of 85,000 to 900,000 Rand. Izak van Zyl's wife has asked if we can put up the account details on our channel, which I've done below the description below this video. Now, let me show you the painting. Okay, now there's the painting that is being sold tonight. And tonight we're auctioning the Roses painting for Izak's surgery, as it could probably save his life, and that he is important to the citizens in our country as a whole. And if he does not make it, unfortunately, I think Boere Lucian will all but implode. What is the name of the painting? Summer Garden. Size 46 centimeters by 61 centimeters. Medium is oils on stretch canvas. Artist is Lynn Ward. Starting price 1,500 Rand. It's an absolute steal. Now, let me get my guest Justus Kilian. But before I do, there's the rose painting. I'll keep it on the side of the discussion. Sorry, before I do get Justus on, I just want to show you this quote because it's very important. He who controls the weather will control the world. Right, let's get Justus on, shall we? Hi, Justus.
Hello, Scott. Hi.
Excellent, mate. Excellent. Right. Now, before we start, I just want to confirm with you the key goals of Agenda 21. As I understand it, they are to redistribute wealth, remove property rights, re-educate our children, and the introduction of social equity.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now,
and also, I mean, it is a plan. How's my volume on that side, by the way? Am I too loud?
No, it's perfect. Your audio is
all right.
fine.
Yeah, it is all those things, and it is a global one-size-fits-all blueprint plan to control all human activity, all of it. And it's obviously not something that most people latch onto easily, so they have to put it into the education system and wait for a generation to be educated in this rubbish.
Right. Now, before we start,
to really move it forward.
What inspired you to study Agenda 21? What was the motivation for you to get involved in this?
Well, the trigger thing was e-tolls. Yeah. Right. Because I've heard about Agenda 21 a lot before that. I followed I read people's books like David Icke, who talked a lot about Agenda 21. I followed Alex Jones and Paul Joseph Watson and those people for maybe a decade before we started seeing the toll gates go up. And then when I started seeing the things appear and started hearing what they were saying about them in the media, I realized that this sounds exactly like what they were talking about.
Right.
And yeah, that's what started it.
Okay. So let's look at Agenda 21. First of all, give us a brief history of how Agenda 21 came about. What actually motivated the United Nations to start this whole thing?
Well, it has kind of a long run-up. It started basically where you can really see it coming into the United Nations in the form of Agenda 21. Sustainable development was around about 1989, although the actual agreement was only signed in 1992. But if you want to get an idea of the ideological background to it, because it is an ideological thing, there was a book published by one of these very prominent globalist think tanks called the Club of Rome. It's a very elite one. If you can go to their website and look through their memberships list. It includes, well, last time I checked, it included European royalty, former current prime ministers, former heads of state, so high-ranking people. But they released this book called The First Global Revolution. I think it was 89 as well, or I'm not sure of the year, but it was, yeah, it looks like it's 91 here in front of me. There's a quote in that book that often comes up when people talk about the history of Agenda 21, and I actually went and looked for this book online way, like years ago, maybe around 2010, and I found a scanned copy of it, and I had to go through the thing to actually find the quote. It really is in there.
Right.
It's called the book is firstly divided into two sections, the problematique and the resolutique. So what is the problem and how are we going to fix it? And there is a quote in there that goes like this: in searching for warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. But in designating these dangers as the enemy, we fall into the trap of mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself.
Right. Now, I got a...
That is kind of...
I got a definition from the Brundtland Report to the United Nations in Chapter 2 of the book, Our Common Future. And they define sustainable development, which is basically Agenda 21, as follows. Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, this sounds very nice and equitable from the outside, but the truth is somewhat different. Can you just outline why that is so misleading, what they're saying?
Right, so an interesting thing about that Brundtland Commission, they were tasked by the UN to come up with to formulate the definition for sustainable development, and that's the common future thing that you just read from. And at the time, he was the vice president of Socialist International.
He's a communist.
Just little tidbit, yeah. But so you asked me about why it is so deceptive. I'm just looking to find the quote here.
Yeah, why it's so misleading. I'll tell you what, I've got another quote here from Morris Strong in the 1992 under Agenda 21, where he said the lifestyle of the middle class was not sustainable and called for the collapse of industrialized nations.
Right. Yes, so basically everything that that we grew up with as children, the kind of life we had, and that the people in our country that were deprived of it thought they were now going to be able to give their children, that is gone. That is deemed unsustainable. You can't do it anymore. This is actually one of the keywords that you will also find if you're looking for Agenda 21 sustainable development stuff. Look for demand management. We don't supply demands anymore. We don't give people the things they want in life anymore. We manage their demand. So that is kind of their ideological leaning, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me like the United Nations...
The life you thought you were going to have is not sustainable.
Yeah, it looks to me like the United Nations is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, that's what I keep on seeing when I talk about the United Nations. Now,
yes,
What is the role of the United Nations?
Well, this is actually I have a friend that I met on Facebook that's actually related to General Jan Smuts, who was, of course, involved in the founding of the United Nations. And what I tried to convey to him is that the United Nations is not at all the same thing anymore that it was back then. In that time, it's not something that I think we can comprehend, because I didn't live through the Second World War. My granddad was still a kid when it ended.
Right.
So, but to them, it seemed like a necessity, I'm sure. Like, this thing is something that we need, and we must have it. But now, while I'm still looking for the other quote, let me just read you some other ones. It is from a blog that I wrote, and it is just to show people how extensive this is. It really touches everything in your life.
This is Agenda 21.
This is a quote from a guy called Daniel Sittars. He is an activist lawyer. He wrote a book called Agenda 21, The Earth Summit Strategy to Save Our Planet.
Right.
And that book says, Agenda 21 proposes an array of actions which are intended to be implemented by every person on Earth. It calls for specific changes in the activities of all people. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all humans, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. So they're serious. It's not a game. They intend to totally change the way we knew the world.
Right. Now, I just want to address the side chat, and just to say, guys, don't forget we're selling this painting. It's magnificent. All the money goes to help General Izak van Zyl, who's in a critical situation right now. He needs a triple bypass, and the public health system is just ridiculous. Now, I saw a question about Sinet said, I know, but Scott said he was talking tonight at 8 p.m. It's actually, I'm talking to Brendy Wells tomorrow night at 8 p.m. And I'm looking forward to that discussion. I think we're going to resolve a lot of things. Oh, sorry, getting back to you, Justus. Okay, so how does Agenda 21 become 2030? Because that's what it is, isn't it? I mean, it's basically, they've moved it now into Agenda 2030 because they've run out of time to actually implement things by 2021. Is that a correct sort of summation?
That's not quite what I think happened. I heard this on another Australian podcast as well. It's just an evolution of the same thing, because Agenda 21 is the global development blueprint for the planet for the 21st century. It's a 100-year
plan. It's a whole century. Got it.
Yeah, that's where the 21 comes in.
Right.
It's for the 21st century.
Okay, now, what are the major ways that Agenda 21 right now is impacting us and we don't even realize it? We'll talk about how it's going to change things in the future later, but what are they doing right now? And for example, is this lockdown around the world something that could be related to Agenda 21 and perhaps coming down the population?
Well, yeah, there are definitely aspects of two major ones of Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, as they are now known. That is definitely the concepts are being introduced and promoted as solutions so that we never go through this thing again that was totally government caused, basically. But as you'll see behind me, I made a video called Overt 19 on my channel, and I describe both the ways in which this pandemic was used to advance sustainable development goals in there. But I just want to, before I go on to how things, the things that you can see in your life now, you asked me why the Brundtland Commission statement was, or quote from that book was so deceptive.
Yeah.
I spoke to Leon Lowe from our Free Market Foundation here quite a few years ago. I saw him a few times at a dinner I used to go to, and a regular thing. And he, a number of years before that, even in 2002 already, he spoke at a conference about sustainable development. And this is what he said. Environmentalism and sustainable development, that's the title of the thing, a developing country perspective. It is not development, but rather a lack of development that is unsustainable. The alternatives to development is stagnation and regression, certainly not sustainable. The more we develop, the more sustainable we become. And that is a universal truth. The more we develop, the more we are able to give people the basic things they want in life and lift them out of poverty. This thing where we're going to run out of resources, I mean, the more we develop, we find alternative resources, we find ways to use our existing ones better. So that is where they get it wrong completely. And as far as things in your life that you can see, well, let's start. The most obvious one I can think of in South Africa is definitely e-tolls for the Gauteng people, because it's something that you drive past all the time. It's like Agenda 21 monuments that you drive through all the time. So that's the most obvious one. Another thing would be a smart meter in your house that it's a rationing device. These things are introduced under other excuses. we don't need meter readers anymore or whatever. But ultimately, this, much like in Cape Town with the water smart meters, they already have a ration there of 350 liters of water a day. But the electricity smart meter does the same thing. Once you deem to have used too much, it's got nothing to do with whether you pay or not. It's once you've reached your ration, they are able to remotely cut you off or send you a warning that you need to reduce your usage.
So everything will be totally controlled.
Yeah. In terms of terms that you can look at, I mean, there's a quite a long list of them, but demand management, I already mentioned, things like eco-mobility, walkable cities, resilient cities.
Tell us about walkable cities, because I found that quite disturbing.
Yeah. A few years ago, I can't remember, could have been 2017, 16, thereabouts. We had a big eco-mobility festival in Sandton. They called it a festival. It was supposed to be a whole month. I think they reduced it to a week in the end, because the plan was to actually close off the entire Sandton CBD to everything except public transport, like buses, and the rest had to be walk and cycle. You see, they've got all these BS terms that they use to sell concepts to people. One of them is walkable cities, and also another thing you will find is this concept of non-motorized transport. Do you know what non-motorized transport is?
I guess it's bicycles, is it?
Yeah, cycling and walking is non-motorized transport. But the resistance to the Sandton thing was so big because there are plenty of issues. I mean, there are clinics and things that people need to get, and the resistance, was so big that they had to scale it down to a week. But that is the kind of thing they will try.
Now, my understanding...
And these things cost money, eh?
Yeah. My understanding is that there's actually a building in Cape Town which has been built by the Rothschilds, where they're actually selling off these tiny little apartments, which is something like the size of a bedroom, where you've got your kitchen and everything else in it. And what they're talking about is that those are going to be like your living accommodation in the future. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I'll clarify some about that, but I must just tell you now, during the lockdown, that we've got two children. The one turns 3 today. Actually, it's her birthday, and the other one is 9 months, so they're still quite small. But I do not know how you are going to raise a kid in an apartment like that. I don't know if it's built by the Rothschilds. It's called the Rockefeller.
It might be the Rockefeller.
And yeah, it's called the Rockefeller. I don't know who's developing it. I can't remember who's developing it. And I think if my memory serves, it's something like from 25 to 45 square meters. And the starting price was over R1 million, or close to R1 million, something like 950. It was very close to what we pay for our freestanding house in Randburg.
Wow, that is absolutely ridiculous. Has anyone bought into it?
I don't know. It's been in development for a while. I think since the water crisis days already. So I haven't checked up on it since.
Yeah, but just for those who are watching, I think one of the most impactful issues related to this Agenda 21 is how people are going to be forced out of the rural areas and into these big buildings with tiny apartments, and their whole lifestyle will be changed. You'll no longer be able to go running across fields and stuff like that. You're going to be basically, as you say, just walking around the little city that you're in, which has got a huge population because that's where everyone's been put.
Yeah, and the reason why they want to do this is to get everyone into cities is for the control that it gives them, and the surveillance possibilities. It's much harder to watch and control everyone if they scattered all over the place. So the best thing you can do right now, if you want to work against this agenda, do what you have to security-wise and move out of the metros and set up communities to start your own infrastructure with the basic things of water, some form of energy, some like satellite Irania. Internet or whatever, and go from there.
Like Irania, for example.
Well, I always say I want to promote 1,000 Iranias, and then people think I want 1,000 places exactly like Irania. That's not at all what I mean. I want thousands of independent communities, yeah. And how they structure themselves, it's really none of my business, but just get off the grid. It's one of the other terms, smart meter and smart city, and the other thing that they don't talk about so much is smart grid. Get out of the smart grid.
Right. Now, what I've also...
That is also incidentally why this drive that you know about, that you've talked about before, of ID 2020, this is also why implants are so important, because the end goal of the implant is to make the physical bodies part of the smart grid. So get away from the smart grid so that you can't be blocked in your economic activity by a treasonous twat.
Are you talking about 5G here?
Yeah, because you see, the system needs 5G to be able to surveil people to the level that they want. 5G needs a lot of towers much more densely placed. And if the connectivity explodes, you can have in a 4G scenario, I think something like 10,000 devices per square mile. And with 5G, you can have 3 million per square mile. And that is why they need 5G so badly to make this thing work. But yeah, that is how 5G is related to, or the most important way in which it is connected to Agenda 21.
Well, what I find extraordinary, and this we're now talking about the control of the population, because what I find extraordinary is that in China, for example, if you jaywalk, they've got cameras that can ID you, and you'll get issued a fine, even though you haven't met a policeman. Nothing. The cameras are that smart. With over 1 billion citizens, 2 or 3 billion citizens, they can identify every single one with these cameras. Frightening.
Yeah, that is frightening. And for this kind of system that they want, this micromanaged control system, that's what they need to make it work in their mind. I just want to maybe bring up something humorous quickly, a little bit humorous. It explains why maybe a lot of people give up, or I felt like giving up thousands of times in the beginning reading about this stuff, because it's extremely boring and bland if you read it from the UN, straight from the UN websites. This is a quote from Lord Christopher Monckton. I don't know if you know him. He's quite active in opposing the climate change agenda at the UN.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, and he had this wonderful quote. It describes exactly how these things are written and why people give up. He says, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change doesn't do simple. It wouldn't call a spade a spade. It would call it a one-person operated, manually controlled, foot-powered implement of simple and robust, yet adequately efficacious lignometallic composition, designed primarily, yet by no means exclusively, for utilization on the part of hourly paid operatives deployed in the agriculture, horticultural, or constructional trades or industries, as the case may be, for purposes carrying out such excavational tasks or duties as may from time to time be designated by supervisory grades as being necessary, expedient, desirable, apposite, or germane with regard to the ongoing furtherance of the task or objective in hand, or on the other hand, underfoot Secretary General. That is how things are written.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No.
And then once you get to the national level where actually it starts ground up. When you get to the provincial and local government level and up, because they harmonize with the national government plan blueprint. Once you get in there, then you see what all this gobbledygook means.
Right. Now, I just want to compare a situation happening or unfolding in America right now, and that is in Seattle, where they've got this little autonomous area that's been taken over by these Black Lives Matter terrorists. It's called CHOZ. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's extraordinary.
I must tell you, in the last 2 weeks, I haven't actually been able to take in much news because I've been working on my own videos. Right. I have heard of that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's actually happened is, since this has happened, it's only been about a week. There've been murders in the area. A lot of the residents have had their doors broken down. Burglaries are rife throughout that area. It's complete anarchy.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And the mayor and governor of Washington, which is, well, Seattle is in the state of Washington on the west coast of America, just below Alaska and above Oregon, that they've both said, oh, it's okay, let it just unfold, let's see what happens, let's see where this goes. That shows an incredible degree of, they just don't care about the communities who live in those affected areas. Now, is this the type of attitude that will unfold with Agenda 21, where they just don't care about people? We just be a number?
Well, I guess so, but you must understand it's because there is a very strong social justice component in the Sustainable Development Goals. If you just go read the headings of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, you'll see some of them in there. And it's also the reason why, I don't know if you saw a clip this last week or so of girls at Pretoria Girls High screaming like banshees about inclusiveness and that whole list of leftist trigger words from the social justice fraternity.
Indoctrinated, that's what we call it.
That comes... It's because of that is in the curriculum, by the way. This is the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
All of them, all these concepts are being taught in the curriculum. And that is because, before recently, we've seen this kind of rubbish only from universities where it was brought, this whole critical theory, Frankfurt School, social justice rubbish that was brought into universities. But now it's school children, and it's not because they're seeing it from their university siblings. It's because it's in their curriculum too.
Yeah, well, what I found extraordinary when I was researching this is that they say, this is the Agenda 21 guys, they say education is an essential tool for influencing our children. And then the Education for Sustainability Toolkit says, this is what they actually say, this is a quote from Agenda 21, generally more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. So what they're suggesting in effect is that education levels should be lowered. Is that a correct assumption? Yeah, you're not far off. Something, and I don't, actually, let me not even bring that up because it's too close to home. But whenever people talk about education as tools or weapons, you may know what I'm talking about when I say education is a weapon. Yeah. But then they mean it when they say it's a weapon. And you're right. They do see people with more dispensable income that can, buy private property as a threat to sustainability because they use more things. But those people employ people who
also want to consume resources, to live. So I don't know where they probably want them on handouts.
Yeah. Now, I was actually sent a spreadsheet by one of my subscribers. I'll just put it up on the screen. You won't see it, but I'll just read from it, because it is basically from the Agenda 21 situation. Let me just go up. Wrong. Where is it? Okay, so what it is it's a list of countries from around the world, and it says 2017 population and 2025 population. And for example, in Australia, they have the population figure at 23,230,000, and the projected figure for 2025 is just 15,196,600. What happened to the other 8 million Australians?
That's a very good question. I guess attrition. The ones that died off weren't replaced because they now have to live in 25 square meter box apartments and can't raise children because they can't afford it anymore, because they have to pay carbon tax, and now it costs 5 times the normal amount to fill up their car, and it costs 5 times the amount to heat their home. So yeah, I guess the old ones died off and the new ones couldn't have children.
So we're talking about the depopulation of the world through Agenda 21. Now, South Africa, for example, 2017, they say the population was 54,840,000, and their target in 2025 is 45,945,100. So that's a drop of nearly 10 million people in South Africa.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but that's very interesting.
I can forward that to you. As I said, it came from one of my subscribers who studies this as well. Now, just looking at the Global Diversity Assessment book, which the UN produced, they state as unsustainable things like dams, golf, roads, private property, the family unit. So they're suggesting that they've got to destroy the family unit. Is that your reading of what Agenda 21 is all about?
Yeah, it is. And it's also why you will see things like our Department of Everything Except Men, and that you are now allowed to discriminate with relief money based on gender. And I focus specifically on gender because I think they are going after men because they are going after the family. That's my assessment of it. But as far as the dams go, it's interesting you mentioned the dams. I did quite a bit of writing on when Cape Town had their water crisis and found quite a few interesting things. For instance, if you search the Agenda 21 PDF document itself for the word dams, it comes up twice, and one of them is to kind of tell you that they're not such a great idea, and you might have to consider it in the context of this being the global development blueprint for the 21st century. Dams mentioned twice, one of them to tell you that it's not really a good thing, and if you look at what it does propose, it's all the things that came out of the Cape Town water crisis: groundwater, water reuse, desalination. Yeah.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
And we were prevented from building dams, by the way. I have the article in one of my blogs or on the Facebook page, but it was near the turn of the millennium, so close to the 2000s area. There were going to be several new dams built in the area, and environmentalist lobby groups stopped it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's actually happening, and I also, through researching this, I see that in America, both G.W. Bush and it was Bill Clinton, both signed executive orders which basically put in place the instruction to various states to start implementing Agenda 21. And I've got the dates actually. Let me just have a look. I've got a whole lot of notes here. Where is it? Yeah. it's somewhere in my notes here. But have you heard about these executive orders that have been signed by the presidency to bring it in?
Yeah, I did. I have heard of them. They are also somewhere posted on my Facebook page that you will see behind me. But
right.
They were quite a long while ago. I don't know if we had anything that, how can I put it, explicit. But we were, Zuma committed us to the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, Agenda 2030, as if we weren't committed to them before. We were committed since the very beginning. These people come out and they recommit us to these things as if it's a totally new thing all the time. The DA recently proposed to replace BEE with the Sustainable Development Goals, and actually proposed that instead of companies getting tenders based on their BEE status, that they get them based on whether or not they are conforming to the Sustainable Development Goals. So, but there's a video on my page. It's called something like UN Agenda 21 Rules Joburg Identification or something like that, where it shows little quotes from a document. It's the environmental management policy for the city of Joburg. It's a draft from 2005. And in there, it tells you the dates. We've been committed since, formally committed at a city, local government level since, it seems like 1998 or something. So, it's not like we only recently climbed onto the bandwagon. We've proudly been there from the very beginning. I have never checked who actually from our government signed the damn thing, but I would assume it would have been in the era of Kortbroek, van Schalkwyk, and those characters that signed it. And from then it became the Millennium Development Goals, and then we ended up with Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 169 targets to be reached, and 230 indicators.
Right. Now, you mentioned just now the Democratic Alliance, and I find it interesting what you said about them talking about bringing in sustainable development instead of BEE. I think that's a huge red flag for anybody. What is also a huge
and
red
again,
flag,
it's pretending like we're not already committed to them. They're not introducing something new.
Yeah, but what's also a huge red flag for me is that Helen Zille, who's the chairperson of the DA, is very high up in one of these Agenda 21 organizations, in South Africa. So the DA clearly have an agenda to push Agenda 21 as sustainable development, which is not in our interest.
Yeah, well, if you think politicians have a hard time understanding biology and viruses, try the atmosphere. They really believe we're all going to die because I drive a Jeep. So they believe they're doing a great thing. They do not understand. Let me just make this, I don't know, can I get more light on myself to make this clear? They do not understand the climate change science at all.
Yeah.
They have no idea. They just recite what they hear from the United Nations and biodiversity assessment reports. That is all they know. They know nothing else. Patricia de Lille is also in one of them, by the way, C40 Cities. She's part of something that doesn't sound sinister at all, called the Covenant of Mayors.
Right.
I don't know if she stole one because she's not a mayor anymore, but I don't know if she stole one.
Yeah. Now, what has been rolled out in South Africa so far under Agenda 21? What has actually physically happened? I mean, is there something that they've brought into play that we're not aware of? I guess 5G could be sort of like part of the technology side that they want to roll in.
Yeah.
Are there any other areas?
Yeah, we've talked about some of them. 5G is one of them. E-tolls is definitely one of them. You see, the thing with e-tolls is it's again to make your car part of the smart grid. Like the tag would be or the pass that you're probably first going to carry on your phone, and then the tag is to make your body part of the smart grid, the e-tag is to make your card part of the smart grid, and the smart meter is to make your energy and water consumption part of the smart grid. So those things are all part of Agenda 21. Whenever you see bike lanes, bus lanes, cycle lanes going up, and by the way, if you thought a road costs a lot of money, try a cycling lane. Wow, those things are really, looks like engineering marvels because they're quite pricey. And what other things do we see? Obviously, whenever Cyril opens his mouth about a smart city, that is totally Agenda 21. And the amount of money that is blown on this is staggering. The amount of, I mean, I know there's a perception in South Africa that, and it's not a totally wrong perception, that the government is useless at everything they do. I'd like to propose that it seems that way because they are focusing all the resources and attention and everything, all their energy, everything towards this. And it's not necessarily what we need or want, but they do it anyway, which is why everything is falling apart. And it seems like they're useless at everything. There's one thing they are good at, and that is imposing this agenda of an unelected foreign body that we never consented to join on us without ever asking us if we even want to belong to the UN, never mind sign up to its 100-year development plan.
Now, my understanding is, you mentioned the UN, my understanding is that the actual building in New York, United Nations, is actually on land owned by the Rockefellers, and they actually
donated as far as I know.
Sorry?
Yes, donated to them, yeah.
So the Rockefellers, when we look at the Cape Town development of that building, which is the Rockefeller Tower or whatever it is, with these tiny little apartments, you know, you're starting to get a picture that they're starting to implement Agenda 21. And I'm sure they've got other buildings like that in other cities, because, you know, to build something like that, you've got to be pretty sure that that's where it's going. You're not going to spend that sort of money unless you're pretty sure that that country is committed to adopting Agenda 21.
No, absolutely. Look, the amounts of money that we've already blown on this is staggering, and it's also hidden. People don't always see it as, it's not hidden in like it's off the balance sheet. It's just people associated with sustainable development, but it actually is. Another thing that they focus on very hard is transport. They want to get people out of their cars and into public transport as much as possible. So there's a lot of there's carbon taxes and a lot of other measures introduced all the time to make it much less attractive to own your own car. That is something we see a lot of examples of that here. Carbon tax is just one of them.
Yeah, one of the things we've just touched on is that what the Agenda 21 guys don't see as sustainable is the middle class. In other words, the average working guy has got a house, he's got a car, he's got da-da-da-da-da. They see that as unsustainable. I find that quite extraordinary. And then, of course, they're trying to break down the family unit. This is totally contrary to the values and the morals of a large proportion of people in South Africa. Yeah, absolutely. And yet you can see it happening by stealth when you see how they're indoctrinating kids in the education system.
Yeah, absolutely. So our kids are still quite young, but I'm definitely leaning towards never sending them to a school, any large school, even if it's a private school. I'd have to be very, very certain of what goes on in the private school before I send my kid there, because the stuff is, I mean, they wrote entire manuals, Agenda 21 for children,
for education,
and they make it clear that it isn't. it's a definite tactic of theirs to go for the minds of the children. They don't make a secret about that. So if you want to keep your family together, if you don't want to lose your children, don't send them to, I call it Satan school. Don't send them to Satan school.
Well, you only have to look at
I'll
what's
tell you
happening.
why I call it Satan school.
Yeah, tell me.
Because pretty soon I'm going to make a video on that topic. A lot of people, must know the cartoonist Germ in South Africa.
Yes.
He recently had a conversation with a Satanist on his show. Not something that I would do, but that is what he does. He talks to whoever he wants. And he lost sponsors, and there was a big backlash. But I'm going to make a video pretty soon showing to people, if you did that, but you support anything about sustainable development goals, you're a hypocrite. Don't send your kids to Satan school unless you want to lose the family. Sorry, that was totally water mixed with gin and dry lemon.
That's okay. Now, look, I guess you really don't have to look further than what's happening in the United States today. Protests happening under the mantle of Black Lives Matter. I don't think I've seen anyone in those protests who's over the age of about 25. Everybody is young. Clearly, they've been indoctrinated through the education system, and if you look
and they do really feel helpless.
And if they don't participate, then they get ostracized. It's a peer pressure thing that you can just imagine with social media. So they feel they have to be part of this great transformation that they're talking about. Now, I want to touch on something else. In South Africa, they're trying to bring in this sex education with kids, 6 or 7, and telling them that it's okay to be queer, it's okay to be gay. You know, at that age, I think that is just criminal. You don't do that sort of stuff. Is this part of Agenda 21 to try and break down the family?
Yeah, that's United Nations inclusivity for you. That's you know what's inclusivity means. You have to tolerate everything except traditional families. Yeah, that's inclusivity. And capitalism, you know, and things that made the world work. Those things are not part of inclusivity.
I think another area that's really impacting on what we think are these main platforms like YouTube, like Facebook, like Twitter. I'll give you an example. Yesterday I put up a video, and all my videos before they go up on the 2020 channel, they have to be checked by artificial intelligence, see whether they can be monetized. And I did a little test. I was talking about Irania. So I said in the title, I said, will white-owned Irania survive? And then I put that through without publishing it so that the artificial intelligence could check it out. And it came back and it said, no, you cannot monetize this video. So I then took out the word white-owned, and within seconds it said, yeah, you can now monetize. So the actual control that they're putting what you publish on platforms like YouTube, extraordinary. And I think, again, it's part of this indoctrination that's going.
Yeah, it's Frankfurt School critical theory rubbish. If people don't know what Frankfurt School and critical theory is, they must just go look that up. Then you'll understand the EFF's language 100%, and even the NCNDA. They all speak critical theory.
Now, I've talked a lot about NGOs like the Open Society Foundation, which is Soros. He be one of the key people behind Agenda 21.
I haven't looked into Soros. I mean, I'm sure he will. I haven't looked into him specifically so much, but it's really easy to look these things up. When you want to search anything, this is something I learned very early on when I started researching this, is don't search for Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030. You can still search for Sustainable Development Goals, but if you want to find something, say George Soros or IMF or World Bank and what their connection would be, search for World Bank Sustainable Development or Sustainability. Search for George Soros and sustainable development or sustainability. That is the way that you'll find them. Initially, when I started looking for stuff from our government, I found very, very little because I was looking for Agenda 21, Agenda 21, Agenda 21, and I found out pretty soon, just call it sustainable development, and then you find mountains of stuff.
Right. Now, there's actually a very interesting download that anybody got a pen and paper there and you're watching, please get that pen and paper ready, or type this on your screen. You can Google Gary Lawrence, that's Lawrence, space, and then the future of Agenda 21 in the new Agenda 21 in the new, and you can download that document, charge, and that'll tell you a lot of stuff that'll make your hair stand on end. Okay, now I want to get back to the family unit, because I think this is probably the most devastating impact of Agenda 21. They're saying that the family unit is unsustainable under the 21.
Yeah, it's the smallest unit that can stand against them, because families can move out of the metros into the countryside, and families can start communities. So that's the smallest unit that they can attack, and that's why they're going for it.
So the best way to fight Agenda 21, as suggested just now, is to move to a community which is outside a city. Set up your own little community.
Yeah.
Now, won't they come
Absolutely.
after that community?
They probably will, but that's why I want thousands of them. That's why a place like Orania, or if you just have 4 or 5 of them, your prognosis then isn't great. That's why I want a lot of them.
Right, okay. Now, I just want to address the side chat for a second. Guys, if you've got questions you want to put to Justus, please just put them in there, and I will definitely send them to Justus. Okay, so when we look at South Africa and the expropriation of land without compensation, the ANC government are talking about, that could almost be said to be an Agenda 21 strategy.
It certainly works to aid Agenda 21 goals. Yes, I actually want to read you something quickly,
Sure.
and just try and illustrate a point. So, tell me if you want to guess who said this. A good example of a cross-cutting goal is SDG 9, build resilient infrastructure to promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. It is both an explicit and implicit component of the SDGs. Progress on target 9.1 would enable progress in access to quality education, healthcare, water and sanitation, among other targets and indicators. It would also focus on those hardest to reach.
Gobbledygook.
Yeah, it sounds like any Cyril speech. So when Cyril said just a few days ago, he said, an inclusive economy is what should be occupying you, Honorable Groenewald, probably talking to Peter Groenewald in Parliament, in your mind and everything you do, rather than let us continue holding on to the privileges that white people have always had in this country. So that sounds like he's talking about our country, but he's not really talking about our country. When he says white people have always held on to, he means the Western capitalist family-oriented societies. That is what he means. And he likes to press that button because it's a sensationalist to say that thing to Peter Groenewald, you know. He's talking the same language as the paragraph I just read you before.
Right. Well, I have to tell you that it makes me think of that comedy series called Dear Prime Minister. I think it's called Dear Prime Minister, where it's in a Whitehall. You've got this fellow who's an advisor. I've forgotten what his name is now, but he comes up with these long statements which mean absolutely nothing. I'm sure people watching will know what I'm talking about, but just put it down in the side chat if you can think of that program.
But they they do this. That statement that he made to Peter Groenewald, a more inclusive economy.
Yeah.
That just means we are replacing your. I don't even want to call South Africa a capitalist economy, but we're replacing your capitalist economy with something else. That is what they're doing when he says inclusive economy. And the things, the privileges that white people have always held on to was the privilege to own property, leave it to your children, be able to send your kids to a school of your choice, and those things you only get with a capitalist system. But that is the things that white people have always hung on to. It's the things that black people that they used for decades have always envied and wanted. Those things you can't have anymore. They're now unsustainable.
Right. Now, I'll talk to you about South Africa. I want to read you a quote from Tito Mboweni, the finance minister. And he said recently, climate change poses the greatest threat to humanity, and South Africa intends to play its role in the world as part of the global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This enables South Africa to be considered positive nations of the world. And by saying carbon tax will make us popular. I think the carbon tax
No,
is really...
I said that.
Sorry?
I added that bit in. I'm paraphrasing him. That's basically what he's saying there.
Yeah.
Carbon tax will make us popular.
Yeah. But do you think that what's happening here is that the politicians are basically just being used by NGOs who are advising them on the ground in Cape Town at Parliament, and surrounded by these NGOs who are pushing?
They're not just surrounded by them. These NGOs actually train them, and they pay for the NGOs provide paid training to politicians of all parties. So now all these opposition parties will have the go-to sustainable development guy. And the main organization responsible for this globally is one called ICLEI. It stood for the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives. They now call them, it's still ICLEI, but they now call themselves Local Governments for Sustainability. And that is the main organization that do this. They provide training to local government officials on how to harmonize with the national government plan, the blueprint. In our case, it will be the National Development Plan, and there's one other one, the National Environmental, I think it's the National Environmental Management Act, not sure. But the lower governance structures, the local government get trained by ICLEI on how to conform to those national government targets, policies.
Right. Now, clearly, Agenda 21 is something that's been implemented stealth in the background. When I think of the MIA, which was the Multilateral Agreement on Investment, which came out in the 1990s, and that was happening behind the scenes. Nobody was supposed to know about it. It was all involving big business and the United Nations. And then you had what was called the PPP. You might remember that. That was the business plan that Trump scuttled. And it's interesting because I came across this term PPP, public-private partnerships, when I was looking into Agenda 21. Tell us what that's all about.
That is actually something that I'm sort of touching on in my video that I'm busy with.
Right.
A good example of that would actually be relating to this pandemic. I don't know if you've seen the introduction of something called a COVID pass. Have you seen it?
A COVID pass, yes. Well, ID 2020 and all these different plans that they've got.
It's called COVID pass. It's
the
a
one
British
in the phone.
cybersecurity.
The one that happens on the phone.
Yeah, British cybersecurity firm that created this product called COVID Pass.
Right.
And that is now, they've had a meet recently in the last, this isn't really in our mainstream media yet, but they've recently had a meeting with, it looks like about 20 governments who have now decided that COVID Pass is the solution for us to to go back to, what did they put it something like back to work, back to life, and basically to get almost your normal life back, except that you now have to carry. I say have to. You probably in the beginning won't have to carry it. It'll just be made cool and trendy, but you're going to have to carry a pass to get back to sort of normal life. And they've made this deal with, it looks like 20 governments. They've shipped the first 50 million of them. Yes. And that will be an example of a private-public partnership, because they're also on their website, they tell you they are already partnered with the United Nations. So they are a private-public partnership now bringing the solution to get us out of the government-created problem.
And South Africa is one of those 20 countries.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, that's what the articles and the news sources that I was able to find says so far. We are on the list, yeah, and the US and the UK and
I think Australia is
a couple
not
of others
at this stage.
Yeah, but you have something similar already, don't you?
Yeah,
and
but it's voluntary.
Also, like a tracker thing on the phone.
Yeah, but it's voluntary, and I don't use it. I'm not going to let any track me.
Yeah.
But
I don't expect these things to become mandatory by government maybe right away. But they might say things like, if you want to go see the rugby game, you need a COVID pass. I won't be surprised. Or if you want to fly.
If you want to fly internationally, yeah, you're going to have something. Now, look, I just...
So that is an example of a PPP.
Yeah, I just want to say to people watching right now that this is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually happening and unfolding behind the scenes, and there's a lot of evidence of that. I've been told the best way to get broad background on Agenda 21 is just to Google Agenda 21 and sustainable development in the same Google search. Come up with it. All good stuff, and it's really happening. Now, I've got a bunch of questions that are starting to come through, and I'm going to throw those to you. But before I do, what's the current price we have on the painting that we're selling to help Izak van Zyl? If someone could let me know that. Marlena, do you have a price there? And I'll just show that painting for a second on the screen, guys. Come on, let's help Izak van Zyl show it. What happened to my painting? There's the painting that we're auctioning, and all the money goes to Izak van Zyl to help him with his triple side there again. Sorry about that. It's just
No worries.
guy. No. Okay, so coming to the questions, D has asked, is China doing the bidding of the New World Order by building new modern infrastructure through Africa? And he then goes on to say, follow the China-Africa project.
Yeah, the China social score and social credit system thing is kind of a model of what we can expect sustainable development-wise. That is the level to which they want you tracked, definitely. And they are helping, I don't know how many or which exact ones, but they are helping many countries. I know they're involved in our country and many other places. I think Zimbabwe and a few others in building infrastructure for the surveillance purpose specifically, but also for some other sustainable development goals.
Right. I noticed that China is also talking about building these futuristic cities in South Africa, especially up in the Limpopo area, where they're looking at this whole big development. Now, they call those like special resource areas. In other words, they get special tax incentives and stuff like that, don't they? And it's only if you're actually operating within them.
Yeah, I don't know too much detail about them. I know China is in Limpopo creating one of those zones where they're building their own power station as well, and it's for their exclusive use. It's not,
right.
It's not for anyone else. And guess what? It's not a solar power station. It's a coal power station.
Ah, so that's fantastic for the greenies, isn't it? Or
Well, yeah. I mean, China is building, even in their own country, coal power stations at a pace that
yeah,
will make us blush.
absolutely crazy. Okay, another question here for you. John Jefferson asks Justice if he is aware of common purpose as they're on the front line for the open society.
I've heard of common purpose. I haven't read much about them. Yeah, as a part of Soros.
It sounds like another misleading statement. But anyway. Okay, Rika Grayling has asked, Q, how long does he think before the banks will collapse? I guess the question is, how long do you think before the banks are going to collapse?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you timings. Guessing times with these things are always going to shoot yourself in the foot. But I think I don't know if they'll so much as collapse. What can, of course, I speak about our financial and economic situation as if we are in a war scenario, and what happened after the last major war. Progressively, we got a whole new financial system, and we've seen headlines about a financial reset coming from locally from the Ruperts and internationally from a lot of other people. Financial reset or a global reset, and I do think this was part of the whole lockdown plan to destroy the economy, and I think that in places where people are allowing the governments they are dragging to cause as much economic damage as possible, because I do think they want to introduce a global carbon currency. But I think before that happens, we will have to get totally cashless first. And if you look for headlines for Australia and the UK, I think maybe even the US, there is already a drive to go cashless, and they're even giving a date. I think the UK by 2024, I don't know. I just saw a headline earlier, but there's already a drive to go cashless, and I think once everything is cashless, or maybe even before then. I mean, my guesses are as good as the next person, because I didn't expect the government to lock us in our rooms for 3 months in January, so maybe I'm completely wrong, and it is before we are completely cashless. But I do think they want to introduce a carbon currency, and we've already got legislation in South Africa setting the framework for something like that, carbon reporting regulations and things like that. And if you read the Carbon Tax Act, sorry, not the Carbon Tax Act, the Climate Change Act, the penalties and things listed in there could very easily be applied to individuals. I've had many arguments from NGOs and things in support of the carbon tax, saying no, it won't apply to individuals because they're going to be thresholds. And yeah, they're going to be thresholds. Thresholds can change. ETOLs can become more expensive. Thresholds can be made near zero eventually.
Right.
So it is open already to be applied to individuals.
When we talk about e-tolls, here in Australia they work automatically. You have like a little gidgee you put on your car, and as you go through it just takes the money out. Now, when you talk about a cashless society, that rings huge red flags for me, because you consider things like carbon tax and stuff like that. That basically gives them the ability to just automatically take money out of your bank account, because you're cashless, and without you even knowing, and just taxing you without you even knowing.
Yeah, a fully digital currency economy would be the most controllable one. They may even go a cryptocurrency route. I don't know, but um, it is the most controllable. Like you can, even if everything is eventually attached to your digital ID and all transacting happens through that. That is the most controllable form of currency and economic activity. You can literally, even if people have enough credits or whatever, you can say, sorry, you have heart disease, you can't buy a pizza with your credits. Sorry, it's the most controllable currency. It's the best way to control all economic activity. Is a totally digital, cashless system.
Obviously tax you, and if you can't pay your tax, then they probably give you lower standing or whatever, so you can't do this, that, and the other. So it's rather like what's happening in China with what they call the social credit. Well, if they upset the government, they lose points, and if they go below a certain point level, then they're really in the shit. Now, I want to touch on this cryptocurrency because Stuart, I won't say his surname, but he lives in Maritzburg, and he's put a lot of money into cryptocurrency, and he Skyped me yesterday, and he said, guess what, Scott? He said, I've been ripped off. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, someone scammed my entire Bitcoin. 460,000 Rand he lost. And he said that 3,000 other people who had cryptocurrency were scammed the same way, and billions of dollars are involved. Apparently, Carte Blanche are going to be doing a story about this in the next few days. But, you know, this is the danger of this digital currency. I mean, you can be ripped off like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know how it happened to him, but look, there are risks associated with cryptocurrencies. I also have some of them. All I can say, I don't want to talk about it too much, but don't leave it on an exchange. I suffered not a big loss, but I suffered a small loss on an exchange as well that was attacked, and they weren't able to recover. They're still under it's a New Zealand one. They're still busy with the legal process to see how much of whose stuff can be recovered, but you need to keep them off exchanges if you keep them. I don't know what happened to that guy, but yeah.
Jason Fivas has said, tell Justus to check his WhatsApp. So there you go. Apparently there's a message in there for your WhatsApp. Now,
Okay.
Richie asks, does Justus Kilian have a YouTube channel? I searched, but I can't find one. What's the easiest way to find your YouTube
It's
channel?
the one right. Yeah, that's the one right here behind me. Agenda21 Truth, South Africa.
Okay, so they just search on that on YouTube and they'll come straight up with it.
Yeah, you can also search on Facebook for a page with the same name, Agenda21 Truth, South Africa, and there you will find also videos on there that you can follow to the page, to the channel. But yeah, you should find it on YouTube if you just search Agenda21 Truth, South Africa.
Right, now, Jackie Monkeys has asked, please ask our guest if he knows anything about Nisara Gasara.
No, I don't.
Yeah, no, Jackie, he knows nothing about that. Okay, Stuart Campbell. The COVID pass also mandates you need a vaccine before getting your pass. How many will take that vaccine? Now, I heard just today that the first 1,000 people have been vaccinated with Bill Gates's version of the COVID-19 vaccine. And they're intending to vaccinate another 1,000 in the next few days. These are still very early times. It's still like a trial. I mean, the stuff they put into these vaccines is horrible. Over to you.
Yeah, I'd like to actually at some stage do some videos on vaccines only, because since we started having children, I actually researched that a lot. But as far as the COVID pass goes, I don't see that it requires a vaccine yet. It requires, at this stage, it seems that the ones we're getting is a health passport, and you require a test with it. So they have to test you, biometrically confirm your identity on your device, scan a fingerprint and those sort of things. And then once the test result is scanned into the pass by the healthcare professional, and then that tells people that you have tested negative. An immunity passport would be one that requires a vaccine, and COVID Pass can also do that, but obviously we don't have a vaccine yet, so they can eventually just say, oh, well, now it's an immunity passport, and then you do require a vaccine for that. Because I don't think they're going to count, oh, I recovered naturally from coronavirus as immunity. I don't see them doing that.
Right. Well, when you use the word passport, it implies that if you don't have that, you can't travel overseas.
Yeah, or go in anyway. It's an access control thing. If you read the promo material on their website, it tells you can scan it much faster than any other than QR codes and things, so people don't have to stand in queues for a long time. It can also work like an e-tag where you just walk through the gate and it scans your pass. It can scan from up to 100 meters away in some cases, so no one has to be close to you to scan you or take the risk of infection. They can do it from a distance. So there's a lot of potential in this thing, and if you look on LinkedIn, the COO tagged one of his recent posts with a whole lot of hashtags, and ID 2020 was in there. Digital identity management, access, authentication. So yeah, they're already involved with ID 2020.
This makes me really think of Pink Floyd and that iconic song that came out in the 1970s called "Another Brick in the Wall." Have you heard that song?
Yes. I think they send you to music camp if you haven't heard that song.
Well, in that song, you know, there's on YouTube, you actually see these kids sort of like walking like robots. You know, they're just, the education system has completely indoctrinated them. I think that is what's actually happening. Now, is there anything that we haven't covered at this stage that you'd like to cover?
That I want to cover right now, I don't think so. We can maybe do it at some other time again, but also I'm planning on bringing out a whole lot of videos explaining the basics for people, because I think I told you before, I only recently started taking my channel seriously. I haven't had time for it before. I was working for MultiChoice for a little over a decade, and then last year, about February, I quit, and I was struggling the whole year to try and establish myself as an independent. And then when Cyril locked me up, it was kind of the only thing I could do, and suddenly I had a little bit of time, not much, because the kids keep us busy. I basically have between about 10 at night and 3 in the morning to work. And then this has now got to become my full-time job. So I have set up crowdfunding pages and channels for people to make donations to help out. So because just if I am able to take kids back to daycare, for instance, I can get a lot more work done and put out more content. I'd like to actually eventually hire people to help me, 1 or 2 people, because the kind of material I try to create, I try to put a lot of work into it, so that it is like a alternative television. If I want people to leave behind all our mainstream controlled media, I want to at least try and give them something that is that had some effort put into it and made look professional. So it takes a lot of time, and I think I'll eventually need help, because there's just I sit with a list as long as my arm of topics that I have to make videos on. So people can head over to the channel and subscribe. I'm having a lot of criticism from people because I'm turning out content too slow. I'm trying. It's my time is limited, but yeah, I'm trying to. I've always from the beginning thought that the way to defeat this is to inform people, because I felt that once they understand what is being done to them, that it's outright treason and basically a global socialism Trojan horse, that they will be angry enough to do something about it. I don't want to tell them what to do with the anger, but anger seems to be the only thing that really gets people mobilized.
Now, we talked about families earlier. You had a daughter, you got a daughter who had a birthday today.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So how many kids have you got?
She turned 3.
Oh, wow.
I've got two, and our whole household has birthdays on the 23rd. So I'm
So it's an
23rd of
expensive
Feb.
day.
Well, it's not on this 23rd.
Yeah.
I'm on 23rd Feb. My wife's on another 23rd, and the two girls are on different 23rds.
So you're on the cusp between Aquarius and Pisces, aren't you?
Yeah. Aquarius and Pisces.
Yeah, because I'm an Aquarian. Okay. Let me just go through his questions. We all covered everything, haven't we? I have got a question here from Willie Truto, who says, will be buying Kruger Rand's help? In other words, should he buy gold?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Any sort of any physical thing that can store a lot of value over a long time, gold and silver are both good ways to do that. It can literally be anything. You could use oil as money if you wanted to, but it's kind of hard to carry around on your back. But anything that has the ability to store value for you over a long period, even if you can, for instance, I'm just grabbing an example, things like gas is something that you can store for a long time.
Are you talking about prepping?
Yeah, household gas that you use for heaters and stoves and things, and that you can trade with that eventually. But gold and silver has always been a good way to store value for people, so I'm a big fan of that. I have some in a vault, but not much. But it's really just for survival, really. Yeah. It's also people, whenever the price of gold and silver rises, people rush in to buy. That is obviously the wrong time to buy. The best time is to buy in advance and just keep it. It's not about becoming a super millionaire or increasing your wealth even. It's just about holding what you have.
It's about survival. I tell you, my
holding what you have.
My silver strategy is to get a lot of the old threepenny pieces, which is silver, sixpences, shillings, florins, half crowns, crowns, and then obviously one. Well, the reason I do that is because, if you're going grocery shopping and they only take silver, and you've only got a 1 ounce silver coin, you're going to have to buy a lot of groceries with that. By having the small coins, it's less weight, less value. You can buy small.
Yeah, I don't know what the 1 ounce is now. Last time years ago, 4 years ago or something, when I bought.
It's about 26 Australian dollars. It's about 21 US.
21 US?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And it must have gone up in like about $7 in a few months, 2 months.
Well, gold has gone up incredibly. It's about 2,600 Australian dollars. It's for currency in rands would be well over 30,000 rand to the ounce now.
Sure.
So, I mean, it was 20,000 rand to the ounce when I suggested to people about a year ago that they should put money into gold. I just think some of my subscribers did. All right.
Last time I bought silver, I think it worked out to about 430 rand for an ounce. Yeah. So that's the kind of economic power that is stored in a coin that is that big compared to your 5 rand coin.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how gold and silver retain their value and fiat currencies don't. They just... All right.
Yeah.
Now, look, thank you so much for chatting to us about Agenda 21. I think we got a bid for 10,000 rand for the painting, did we, Alina?
Oh, wow.
10,000 rand, I think we got a bid for.
That's very good.
If the successful bidder can just send me an email, just so we can confirm that bid. Now, going back to you, Justus, is there a message you would like to give to people watching this video now or who might want to watch it later?
Besides the one we already covered about if you want to hang on to your children and getting out of the metros, you can read up yourself on Agenda 21 under Sustainable Development or the Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
You can look for those terms yourself in our legislation, in our media, and see what they're busy doing. And you can follow my Facebook page, Agenda21 Truth South Africa. There's always something being posted there that's related to Agenda21. I don't post other rubbish on there. It is dedicated to only that. And the best, you have to first understand what you're facing before you can think about how to counter it or bring it down. So first of all, people need to inform themselves about what it is, what it looks like, what it means in your life. And then the best way to fight it is to not comply, but you can only not comply if you know what you have to avoid compliance with. So yeah, people need to educate themselves. I hope I can do a good enough job with the channel that I've started producing for now.
Wow. Okay, I've just got a sorry, I got a comment from Marlena, and she says yes, the bid is 10,000 rand for the painting from Willem Berg, and he is going to donate the painting to Izak van Zyl. Oh, that's a wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Willem. That's Mark will also donate 5,000 rand to Izak. Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, if you guys can just contact me through the homestays@gmail.com, so that we can get that money off to Izak, that'll be fantastic. Right now, okay. Justus, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's
Thanks so much for having me.
You. And look, I think everybody should get themselves up to speed with what Agenda 21 is about, because clearly it is going to impact every. Forewarned is forearmed. Okay, to the moderators in the side chat, thanks guys. Once again, you've done a fantastic job. To the donors, thanks guys. That's fantastic. Look, if we can help Izak van Zyl, that is a beautiful see. For all of those who've been watching tonight and participated, thank you for your involvement. And for those who watch this video later, I hope this discussion has opened your eyes as to what Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 are all about, because Agenda 2030 is just basically the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just an evolution of the same thing. It's a 100-year plan. Thanks so much for having me, Scott. It was a good chat.
You're very, very welcome. And I'll send you the link to this discussion in a few minutes. So if you want to put that up on Facebook or wherever, just feel free.
I will.
Righty.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Cheers, guys.
Okay.
Please take care, and we'll see. Don't forget tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 8 p.m. I'm going to be speaking to Brendy Wells about the ARC project, and we're going to be discussing, obviously, this shady character, Hiroka Gasperi. And the main objective of the live stream tomorrow night is to try and get the ARC back on track, because it's a very, very important project for South Africans wanting to. And of course, I fully support that agenda. The Loving Life channel fully supports the ARC and what Brendy Wells is doing. And I'm hoping that we can collaborate in the future together. All right, guys, take care.